This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended to cause or induce breach of an existing agency agreement.
Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
And welcome back to the Edmonton Commercial Real Estate Podcast.
It's the Edmonton Commercial Real Estate Podcast today, Cory, because we have Bronwyn Scrivens. She is a commercial real estate broker, associate broker at Omada Commercial in Edmonton. She specializes in industrial real estate. This is an exciting episode today, a bit of a departure from our BC-centric content that we usually produce.
Well, industrial is a magic word in our industry. It's been that way for a couple of years. And,
Right.
And obviously, we have land constraints over here in a lot of markets, and it's not uncommon that you're now having tenants, developers, large-scale asset owners now are looking into both Edmonton and Calgary now.
Right.
A, price, B, lease rates, all of that stuff. So we wanted to have Bronwyn on the show to say, hey, tell us about your marketplace. How does that compare to over here? And I think a lot of people will be stunned when you hear some of the prices that you can acquire acreage for in Edmonton versus, say, Burnaby over here at $7 to $9 million.
I was watching, like, your pen was smoking on the piece of paper, basically, as you were jotting down the various cap rates and price per square foot and et cetera, et cetera. But if I know Cory right, he's going to crunch some more numbers after this show.
Well, actually, that was my list for Costco on Saturday. But yeah, 100%. Now, where we were sitting there, and I think when you hear the cost for land, the
Right.
lease rates they can achieve, what things are selling on a price per foot, what the vacancy rate is and where it's come from, you can understand really quickly why developers and investors would look into the Alberta market when you look at the numbers that are so scarce over here in BC, how those numbers could pencil out and be really interesting in a market like Alberta. And like you had said prior to us even recording, Calgary is a market that has a lot of things going for it as of late.
Right.
And recently the home prices have gone up, 2 consecutive months now, which, I mean, we're not poking fun at them versus BC, but that's a lot because Alberta tumbled quite hard years ago. And now it seems that they're coming back. So it's really
It's a busy housing market.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like they're very busy in commercial right now.
Yep.
And, you know, I think there's a lot of hype or a lot of momentum generally behind Alberta at the moment. And it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting to get Bronwyn's take on the future of the province and why she's excited about it.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, she unpacks it all. She's a specialist there. She knows her marketplace. Great episode. Really an eye-opener if you follow the industrial market here in BC versus what Alberta and especially Edmonton has gone through and where they're currently at right now.
And I like this because if you are a commercial real estate investor or you're trying to become a commercial real estate investor, the price points, like this seems much more entry level for people that are looking at BC and going, well, I don't have $10 million or whatever, right? So there's definitely some investment opportunities for more entry-level investors, like mom and pop investors that are looking to get into commercial real estate. So it's very exciting to have Bronwyn on the show. And maybe we should cut to our episode.
Let's not waste any time. This week's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Impact Commercial Group.
Really enjoy working with Impact Commercial. And we should say Al and his team can basically do anything when it comes to lending.
Anything when it comes under the commercial umbrella. You're building a building in development, we got you covered. You're buying land, we'll make that happen for you. You're investing in a property or multifamily building, check. Owner-occupiers looking to acquire their own space, double check. Anything commercial financing you need, Impact Commercial is your go-to.
ImpactCommercial.ca. And we should say over 50 years of combined experience. So trust these guys. They're the right fit.
Best in the business, in my opinion.
Okay, so we're here with Bronwyn Scrivens. She is an associate broker specializing in industrial at Omada Commercial in Edmonton. Welcome to the show, Bronwyn.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for taking the time today. Can you maybe start by telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Of course, yeah. My name is Bronwyn, as you mentioned. Cold calling is always a treat when my name is Bronwyn Scrivens. I have to spell it out all the time. But I specialize in industrial sales and leasing in the Edmonton or the greater Edmonton region. Dabble a bit down in Calgary, but pretty much focus in the Edmonton region. Although we have a lot of hefty markets up north as well, like Grand Prairie and Fort Mac with our energy industry. So we kind of encompass the full province. I started my career at Cushman & Wakefield in Edmonton as well. I did about 5 years there as an industrial agent and then transferred over to Omada, where we're a locally owned firm, and just the goal of kind of growing an industrial team at that shop and having a bit more autonomy and not as much, I guess, people under one roof as it was at Cushman. So it's been a really unique opportunity to be part of a big brokerage house and then as part of a local, smaller entity that I am now. And then prior to, I guess, what I do now, I was fortunate to attend Cornell University and was able to get a commercial real estate specialization there. And so that's kind of what started my interest in the field. And I just realized that I love working with people, and that's kind of what got me into brokerage.
I think this is our first guest who went to Cornell.
Well, good. I know there's not many of us out here in Western Canada. I can tell you that most people that go to Cornell don't know where Edmonton is.
Corey, didn't you go to? You went to Cornell Community College in
not
in
even
Surrey, didn't you?
to Port Coquitlam Local Community College. She shared a school at the high school. It was called Continuing Education is what they call it.
Right.
Also known as you still haven't finished high school yet. You're too old to be here.
Right.
It was the acronym was Cornell. But
Exactly.
Well, Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining us today. One reason why we wanted to have you on the show is the magic word in our industry right now, obviously, is industrial. And the industrial landscape in BC has just exploded over the past 5 years. COVID has made it even that much harder to find industrial land and industrial space. We hear a lot of tenants now, and also people who are looking to develop, are pivoting out of BC purely based on lease rates and rent and land acquisition costs, and now are looking into the Alberta market. What's happening where you are?
Yeah, no, it's 100%. We're seeing those groups coming from Vancouver. We're welcoming them with open arms, which I'm sure you guys don't want to hear. But it's been a really crazy few years in the industrial sector. Only, I would say, amplified by COVID. It was kind of already heading this direction. The trajectory was already up across the country, but COVID kind of exacerbated so many of the trends that we're all seeing as far as e-commerce, online shopping, people wanting things to their doors the next day as opposed to wanting to wait for things way down the road. Vancouver, I would say that there are still groups that are looking to be in the Vancouver market. Obviously, there's a very large population base there that still needs goods and demands goods. But I think it's more an availability thing where there's not, basically you guys are land constrained. And I'm sure that topic comes up all the time with you, but when there's not availability, they have to find alternatives. It's not like they'll just be like, oh, okay, great, too bad, we'll just deal with it. It's like, no, there's still demand out there, and there's a heightened demand in everything. So Calgary and Edmonton have kind of reaped the benefits of that. I shouldn't say kind of, we've absolutely reaped the benefits of that, especially because I don't know if you guys know this, but we're in a pretty long drought for the last 5 years or so with the change in appetite for oil and gas production across the country.
We've heard.
I don't know if you heard about that, but but Alberta has been like it was still active, but it was quiet for the last kind of 5 years or so, which meant that a lot of development happened in like 2012, 2013, 2014 from institutional developers for industrial space. 2014 and 15, like literally the end of 2014 heading into 2015, that was basically when governments switched over and oil and gas was no longer cool, wasn't a cool kid anymore. And essentially we had a bunch of warehouse space that sat for years, honestly, like just vacant big box spaces that sat for years. Wow. But it didn't matter, like it didn't need to be filled, or it wasn't going to be filled because there was still space in other markets and there wasn't the demand that there is now. So, fast forward the last couple of years, I would say, and Toronto is capped out, Vancouver's capped out, Montreal and Ottawa, like all these places that have typically had most of the distribution users, they need locations, and they're not just looking at Alberta. They're looking at Manitoba. They're looking at Saskatchewan. Alberta is up there. And because we are so much closer to Vancouver, we're getting a lot of that outflow from Vancouver in particular. But a lot of these distribution groups just need space. And so certainly we have seen heightened demand, which is now creating an issue where we, like everyone, are being faced with the same backlogs in construction, the timeline delays, and we're starting to get to a point where our vacancy is creeping downwards, our lease rates are starting to creep upwards, and we're all kind of in the same boat here.
Has it been would you say it's been driven largely by COVID, or was it pre-pandemic that you started to see an uptick?
I would say we were starting to see an uptick slowly before COVID. I would say 2019 was a pretty good year for us. Nothing like it is right now, but it was still very much a good year. And then 2020 hit. And of course, I think probably everyone kind of had that first few months of just halting of everything while companies were trying to figure out what the heck is going on. But as soon as distribution users realize that there's more demand than less demand. And industrial space, it's really interesting because, a lot of different tenants and user groups, like if you're an office user or retail user, they were mandated to shut down. They were mandated that you can't be in the office, or you can't have a gym open, or you can't have restaurants open, or whatever. A lot of industrial users weren't required, but they were deemed an essential service for a lot of what they were doing, because they were creating goods, they were distributing goods, they were warehousing. And not only that, in a warehouse, rarely are you, what's the distance, 6 feet? Rarely are you within 6 feet of your neighbor. There's so much space, right? So a lot of the warehousing stayed open, which meant that could keep kind of putzing along through COVID, while a lot of the other asset classes kind of had to relook at their leases and determine their clauses for force majeure and all that fun stuff. So long story short, it was creeping up because I think the trend was happening prior to COVID with, our transition into online shopping and e-commerce and distribution and all that. But certainly COVID amplified that trajectory.
Now, is there a particular industry that you guys are seeing that sort of either has emerged or has continued to emerging that's taking up a lot of the square footage? Like, as an example, downtown Vancouver, the biggest driver of the office market for the past few years, and again, just got amplified during COVID, was the tech industry. Are you seeing any industry or maybe large big box tenant that's coming in that's taking up a lot of this square footage and kind of leading the charge?
I mean, I think we've all been a recipient of the Amazon effect.
Yeah.
Edmonton in particular has in the last, 3 years now. So prior to COVID was when the first one came, I think 2019. But in the past 3 years, we've got 4 new Amazon warehouses to the tune of 3.3 million square feet or so. So that's just one user group. And with Amazon comes all of the other, subsidiary or secondary businesses that want to be located near Amazon or that distribute similar to Amazon. It's if they're doing it, then we can do it, kind of thing. So I would say that Edmonton, typically, we had the distribution market before, but I would say it was more so oil and gas distribution products, products for our energy industries, not so much retail goods. We're seeing a lot more retail distribution tenants coming to our market. We leased out a warehouse to Structube. We leased out a warehouse to HelloFresh, which is a meal delivery company. Yeah. Leased out a warehouse to a couple warehouses, OK Tire, a bunch of these kind of consumer good type tenants that I would say we wouldn't normally have been as competitive on as other cities across Canada, but because of the availability that we had. And I would say with those tenants and with many of the tenants that are in the market right now, they need space yesterday. They don't need it in 12 months from now. And with the timelines for construction, which are actually getting even closer to a year and a half to 2 years,
wow,
that doesn't even work for them, right? So they have so much demand, and they're starting to hoard goods. They want to have goods so that when people require it, they can actually deliver it. So that's been a big driver, I would say, for our market in particular. But also the real silver lining is that the energy markets have been improving over the last 12 months. And so we are also seeing an uptick in our manufacturing base, which has always been kind of the bread and butter of our, particularly of Edmonton, of our region.
There seems to be a lot of hype around Alberta right now, just in general, a lot of positivity, which obviously we haven't seen in a number of years. Can you talk a little bit about your experience on the ground? What are people excited about in Edmonton and in Calgary right now?
Yeah, I mean, Alberta's awesome. I think Alberta's the best. I mean, as I mentioned, I went to university out of country, and I ended up deciding to come back to Alberta. I think the hype of, I mean, it's probably topical because, you guys specialize in residential and commercial, but Alberta actually is an affordable place to live. And that is very, very valuable these days, right? Like, aside from the fact that we can actually build out distribution and industrial space or any type of commercial space that really anyone wants, because we aren't constrained by land. All we're constrained by are timelines to get land, master plan, subdivided, ready to go for development, which a lot of municipalities are actually being very proactive in kind of going ahead with a lot of the underground work and getting things started. But I think a lot of companies now are not just looking at, I think they're looking at like a quality of life component too. Like, I don't know if you guys, I mean, I'm sure it's the same everywhere, but like labor is a really, really big issue right now where a lot of these companies cannot find labor. I mean, you see it all the way from the Starbucks or restaurants in your neighborhood, all the way to the distribution warehouses or trucking companies. Like, everybody has a labor problem right now. So a big problem for them is trying to find workers. And if workers can't afford to live, especially if you're looking at that kind of entry level worker, a warehousing laborer or something like that, if they can't afford to live in Vancouver, I would say most of them cannot. Whereas in Alberta, in Calgary and Edmonton, they can probably even afford to buy a house here, right?
Now, if we can play a game here for a quick second, this is more for me than anyone. If I take an acre of industrial land, let's say in Burnaby, which is, half an hour, 20 minutes outside of Vancouver, depending on the zoning and the location, you could be looking 6 to 9 million an acre.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane.
So I show up at your door and I say, Bronwyn, I want 1 acre of land. I want to be about 20 minutes outside of Edmonton, an industrial hub. How much am I paying for that acre?
So if you're looking in the hub areas where Amazon is, for example, in both Calgary and in Edmonton, you're probably buying that acre for anywhere from $550 to $650 per acre, $550,000 to $650,000 per acre.
So out here, as a comparison, that's a parking stall.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Wow.
So when you're looking at the total picture, like these massive companies, like they're not just looking at one thing, like population density. Obviously, they want to be by the ports, which are coming through Vancouver, and that's a big component. They want to be by the population. There's real reasons to be in Vancouver and that they need to be in the Vancouver area. But when they're looking at the costs I just think that there's so many components that are going into it. And the fact that, you're, what is that, 1/10 the price on land alone? Like, what lease rates do you need to get to make up for that differential? Or do you have to pay to make up for that differential as a tenant?
Well, why don't we ask that question? So you can't see Adam here right now. Adam's checking his bank account so fast when you said 550,000. He's
still
like,
zero. Still zero.
Well, it's okay. I went to get a coffee today and mine said negative $1,700. So you're better off than I am. So if I buy the land for 550,000 and I build I talk to you and I say, hey, how big do I have to build this? What type of lease rates am I seeing for those? Let's say something as small as 2,500, 3,000 square feet. And then what am I seeing for the 10, 20, 50,000 square foot fulfillment centers on a base rent type?
Are you talking kind of your newer buildings or are you thinking older stuff?
Well, let's go down both roads.
So let's start with the new stuff. Let's say you're going to take a full building, like a full 100,000 or 150,000 center that's getting built right now. You're probably in the 9 to 950 per square foot range net. You might even be able to get into the high 8s if the building is not brand new, but was built prior to the construction chaos that we're seeing right now, because their price points would obviously be less.
Okay.
If you're looking for like a 2-bay deal, like 25,000 or so, you're probably getting into the kind of 950 to 1050 per square foot range net. And that's including like a small office build out and kind of a normal warehousing type site, like maybe a 5 to 10% office build out. If you're looking for a small kind of this, I would say like your local business warehouse space, so 2,000 to 5,000 square feet, you're probably in the, I would say, $9 to $11 per square foot range. If it's on like a main road, like kind of one of our arterial roads, maybe in the $12 to $13 per square foot range. So the unique thing in Edmonton is that we're not as low as Calgary's cheaper. Calgary has been cheaper on the warehousing side, just slightly.
Why? And no offense to Edmonton. I'm a huge, I like both cities, but Calgary to me is a really, really stunning city, and you get the Chinooks and
but Edmonton's got Connor McDavid.
Oh, right.
That's right. That's $1 a foot right there.
100%.
But I'm surprised to hear that. Why do you think that is?
I think that everything, when you're looking at lease rates, comes down to the supply demand equation, right? And I would say that Calgary has always been like the more white collar headquarter type city. So it's that's where the head office for the oil and gas companies, the energy companies, the tech companies, and I think that's where they're tending to locate. Edmonton, on the other hand, is like the hub for the blue collar side of industry. So we're the manufacturing shops, the service shops, the trades, like transportation, like a lot of those guys are located more so in Edmonton than Calgary, because historically they're going north. They're going up to Fort Mac, they're going to Grand Prairie, they're going to Lloydminster. And so for those types of users, like I think that's why our industrial market has been typically stronger, is just because we have a lot more, and specifically entrepreneurial businesses. So lots of small to medium-sized businesses that are setting up shops and operating out of Edmonton and then heading up north to do their business in the energy sector. So that's why I think it's been historically a little bit more than Calgary. Calgary's always been a bit more distribution based because they are, within that, I think, 1 day drive of Vancouver. So they've tended to attract more of the distribution users if they were coming to the province. But now Edmonton is starting to see some of that as well. And that in big part is because, we're pushing this Port Alberta mandate. And if you haven't heard of Port Alberta, it's worth looking up. But basically it's connecting our air cargo capacities, our intermodal rail yards, our transportation, like our highway, high load corridors that go north and then also east and west. Also, interestingly enough, Edmonton, if it's within a 1 day flight for cargo planes, if they're coming from, I think anywhere from either Beijing or Shanghai north, they can do that in one flight. Whereas if you're going anywhere further south, they have to stop. Wow. Like they usually stop in Alaska. So Edmonton's a really unique hub for Asia in that capacity, because if you're thinking about it from the, the way that the curvature of the world is, it's actually shorter to fly into Edmonton than into Vancouver.
Wow.
If that makes sense.
I didn't even know that. So just to recap, so Adam, you would work in Calgary.
Right.
I would work in Edmonton.
Right.
Right. So how much am I buying strata warehouses for in these markets? Because I'll give you an example, and this is where just hearing these numbers, I can see why every developer is jumping over the Rockies. So I come to Burnaby and I buy an acre of land for, let's say I get a deal on it. I'm paying $7 million. And then I go build the catastrophe that I'm going to build and I'm getting $20 a foot in rent. Or I go to Edmonton and I buy the same acre for $500,000 because Bronwyn's going to get a deal for us. And then I'm getting $12 a foot on rent.
Yeah.
I can see quickly why developers are jumping on planes heading your way.
It's certainly a compelling story. The cap rates are certainly not as compressed here as they are in other markets. And you're seeing the same thing in the States as well, by the way. Like you're starting to see a lot of developers and tenants seek out, alternatives to LA, to New York, to New Jersey, to Chicago, because it's just getting so congested and they can't, I think in some of those major cities, the industrial parks now are like an hour outside. Like that's how far they've been developed out. And the demand is still not stopping or dwindling, right? So a lot of groups are looking for these alternatives. And I've heard an interesting thing about, there's a rail line connection that's going to be going, and I should probably look this up before I talk about it, but it's between CN and Kansas Southern. Let me just look.
Don't worry.
Nobody's going to fact check
this. Everything I guess says we fact check it meticulously, so make sure you're bang on.
I'm going to fact check Cory.
Yeah, that's fat check. That's fat check.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that over here, if that's what you're wondering.
It's like Kansas City and CN, and basically it's meant to be a merger. And so CN goes obviously across Canada, and then Kansas City Southern goes from that north-south down into Mexico. So they're trying to create these rail lines that are going to connect North America down into Mexico to try and onshore a lot of the production that's happening over in China. But basically, it's opening up all these new and activating all these new cities across North America that typically wouldn't have been considered, but just to get out of the bigger cities.
Yeah. So one thing as the residential agent on the show here, when I talk to a lot of, I've considered Edmonton for residential revenue properties before. And my concern has always been like the rents, like the numbers really look great in Edmonton. But one thing that's always been kind of holding me back has been the vacancy rate is quite high compared to Vancouver, where, you know, it's expensive here, but you pay for a really really low vacancy rate. Like what are the vacancy rates like in commercial?
So they're getting better. They were, so I'll say at the end of 2020, which was, you know, it was slow. It was definitely much slower in 2020. It was not bad during the end, kind of. It picked up a bit, but it was pretty slow in 2020. And we were in the kind of mid-7 vacancy rate in Edmonton. Right now in Edmonton, we are sub 5%. So we've gone down a substantial amount in the last basically year and a half, 18 months. Calgary is even more so. Like I've heard they're even kind of sub 3% vacancy. So yes, Vancouver is sub 1%. It's you guys basically are full. There's no more room. We are getting low right now, but we are seeing, I think there's about 5 million square feet under construction in Edmonton. I think about, 6 million under construction in Calgary. But of that, about 75% of it is already pre-leased. So
Wow.
This isn't all just speculative. Some of it is design build, like for tenants that are, you know, creating a building and are prepared to wait the timelines for construction. But some of it's speculative and it's already pre-leased before the doors are even, you know, unlocked. So the demand is certainly there. And I think the vacancy rates are going to continue to creep down. You kind of want a bit of vacancy though. Like you want to be able to move people around. I don't know. Maybe I say that selfishly from a broker perspective.
No, I think you're exactly right. Because what we've experienced over here in Vancouver and Vancouver Island and BC Interior and stuff like that is the vacancy rates are so unhealthy for tenants. I mean, it's a great world as a developer and a landlord, but the vacancy rates are so unhealthy for tenants. A lot of them are probably doing deals that they can't even afford, nor do they know they can afford it just yet. But they have to sort of, you know, they got a gun to their head if an opportunity comes up. And I think we're seeing that all over the board. And the office market saw that in Vancouver. And I mean, COVID hit and everyone thought the world was going to end over here. And then, you know, the tech industry just gobbled up and backfilled everything that came available, it seemed like.
Yeah.
If we're talking about investment side of it, me and Adam show up in my mom's Winnebago and we've got a bucket of cash. What type of cap rates can we expect if we're looking at industrial on an investment side? And then maybe a follow-up to that question is if we're buying something pre-construction, how much are we paying on a price per foot metric if I'm buying, say, a 3,000 square foot owner-occupied type industrial space?
Yeah, so the cap rates are, I would say, very dependent on the type of asset that you're looking to buy. So like, as an example, we just had a record sale for 3 Class A distribution type products in the Edmonton market that were brand new buildings, fully tenanted. One was Fountain Tire, one was Amazon, and one was Schlumberger. And they sold sub 4.25 cap. Basically, that's like up in the realm of institutional to institutional. So that's a whole different ballpark of goals and mandates. But that was a really, you know, big sale for our market, showing that we are kind of in that realm, like just basically saying that distribution products, wherever it is, if it's occupied by the right tenant mix, it's going to achieve really good returns. If you're looking for like an owner user, like, let me think here, like say $2 to $5 million, like kind of your entry level industrial developments or multi-tenant building, you're probably going to find something if it's within the city of Edmonton, I would say in this, you know, 6 to 6.5 cap rate. And if you're outside of the city in one of the periphery markets, maybe it's more, the tenant mix isn't as good, you probably could get north of 7 even. So it's just a dependent on, you know, is it Class A tenants? Is it, you know, a newer building or older building? Is it, you know, I don't know, just a number of factors, right, that are going to determine the actual value that you're going to get. But we're kind of ranging, I would say your average deal is in the 6s somewhere.
Wow. And then on a price per foot metric, if I'm buying something pre-sale for an owner-occupier type thing, how much am I paying on a price per foot to acquire, let's say, a 3,000 square foot grade level door industrial strata lot?
Yeah. So for condos, so we call them condos. I think it's basically the same thing as strata in Vancouver. Essentially here, if you're going to buy a brand new unit that's, built well, looks pretty, you're probably going to be paying in the 200 to 225 per square foot. And that would be like the nicest units, maybe up to 235 per square foot. If you're looking at an older product, maybe lower ceilings, maybe not as nice of a building, you're sub 200, you're probably in the, I don't know, maybe even down into the 160s to 180 per square foot, depending on the quality and location of the assets. It's very dependent on functionality. Like we have a very, very big owner user market in Edmonton. Yeah. So a lot of businesses that want to own their own real estate, and they'll $1 million building, then they'll get their $4 million, then they'll get their $6 million. And they might have 2 or 3 buildings across the province, or maybe just around the city of Edmonton, but we have a strong base for that. And I would say those guys, depending on the location within this, is honestly so dependent on if it's in a periphery market or within the city. And like Atchison is one of our sub-markets directly west of Edmonton, and it's probably around 1% or 1.5% vacancy. It's very low there, and everybody wants to be there. It's lower taxes outside of the city. Land is cheaper. The counties are very quick to get permits to completion for user groups. And out there, owner users are paying more. They're paying probably $275 a foot, but that's because they want to be out there. And all of those buildings are you're very functional, like 10 to 20,000 feet on 2 to 3 acres, just really works well for a number of different user groups.
Wow.
Yeah. But within the city of Edmonton, you're probably, I don't know, for an older, like you're kind of class B product, class C product, you're probably in like 150 per square foot.
So to give you a comparison, in Port Coquitlam, which is a community, I'm probably wrong in my numbers here, but I'm going to say it's probably 80,000 people, maybe 100,000 people. It's probably about an hour outside of Vancouver. Brand new industrial there is selling out at $725 a foot.
Yeah.
So it's just you can see how the attraction to the Alberta market for developers would be.
In thinking of that, if you had to kind of put a buyer profile out there for people coming from BC and Ontario, I guess, investing in the Alberta market, like, are there certain characteristics? Are these experienced investors? Are they people from the development community? Are there a lot of new to commercial investors? Can you talk a little bit about who's buying?
Adam's asking for a friend, just in case you're wondering.
This friend owns a Winnebago.
Yeah, I'm asking for Cory's dad.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, we're seeing interest from a number of different groups. So we've always had interest from, obviously, there's Albertans love, like local Albertans, local Edmontonians and Calgarians. They're always, pro Alberta. So they're going to continue buying real estate here for their businesses. It's been a real steep uptick in the last couple of years from groups that are coming from different provinces, both owner users, like your average, like whether it's a distributor or a manufacturing business, they're fed up, to be honest. Like they're getting priced out of the market. And especially if they need to grow or some kind of movement like that, right? I'm seeing a lot of brokers, even in the States, kind of saying, and in higher activity markets like Vancouver, telling tenants, like, if you can, just buy the real estate, because then you're not going to be at the whim of the landlord in another 5 years who's going to jack the rents up again. Because how does the market slow down when there's no more availability and the demand is only increasing, Yeah. So I would say we're seeing actual occupiers, tenants, and owner, and I guess buyers, people that want to buy their own building for their business, or tenants that, same thing, are just seeing better fundamentals as far as the lease rates, the type of space that they can get. Like they can get a brand new building for $10 with the right ceiling heights and column spacing and grade and dock loading, or whatever it is that they need, as opposed to Vancouver. You might have one option, you might have 2 options, but you're probably competing with 4 other groups for them, right? And so you're kind of at the whim of you get what you get and you don't get upset. So they come out to Vancouver, or they come out to Edmonton. We're seeing institutional developers and buyers. We're also seeing just other smaller, not institutional, but smaller buyers and developers coming into our market, because everybody's kind of feeling the same thing across the country. Is like the cap rates, the margins are getting so much smaller in these bigger cities, and they need to place money.
Yeah.
So they're looking for opportunity zones, if you will. And Alberta is checking a lot of the boxes, not to mention that we have a very skilled labor force here because we have been so involved with the energy markets for many years. We've got a great trades program. We've got lots of, educated, skilled labor. And I think people, again, going back to the fact that you can buy a house here, like people will move to Alberta for that reason alone, that they can raise a family here with 2 kids and have a backyard, as opposed to being jammed in an apartment in Toronto or Vancouver or something, or be 3 hours outside of the city. They'll come out here and do that. And then they can get a great job. And, employers are seeing that too.
Wow. Well, Bronwyn, we thank you so much for taking your time today and coming out and joining us here to tell us more about the Alberta market. But before we let you go, we got this small segment called the 6-pack, which is 6 lighthearted questions we get to ask you so we get to know you a little bit outside of the office. Can we have you hang out for just 5 more minutes?
Sure, of course.
The 6-pack is powered by our great friends over at Red Point Law.
Oh, the guys at Red Point Law are fantastic, Cory.
For all your legal needs when it comes to commercial real estate, visit them at redpointlaw.ca. Okay, so we're going to do the Alberta edition here. So we'll give you an easy one to start. Favorite restaurant or bar?
Favorite restaurant or bar? I love in Edmonton going to the Fairmont, our beautiful Fairmont Hotel on the River Valley. They have just an amazing patio area in the summertime that you can go sit out on. There's lots of people that you bump shoulders with there. Edmonton's a big small town, if you will. Like you kind of see a lot of people downtown when you go. So I really like the Fairmont Mac Hotel and the patio section that they have there.
Ah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
What are you binge watching lately, or a favorite movie recommendation?
Binge watching right now, I'm finishing, or I'm just getting onto the second half of Ozark because I love that show. Favorite movie, let me think. I love The Truman Show. Have you guys seen that?
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had
a
that
throwback,
one.
right?
We haven't had that one.
Yeah. Truman Show is such a good movie. I mean, it's a classic Jim Carrey, and makes you really think about, makes you think.
Yeah. Those days when we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What's a book everyone should read?
I finally just got around to reading Atomic Habits. I'm sure that's probably come up before. Yeah. That one I really liked, just because it was really, we're always trying to set habits, good habits, and get rid of bad habits. I'm sure you guys are the same. But that one I thought was really good because it was just very simple, and you're like, oh, okay, that's not hard. I can do that.
That might be our most recommended book on the show. I think
so. Yeah,
it's a great recommendation
too, right? It's probably only out in the last couple of years, so that's probably why.
Yeah, great recommendation.
Favorite vacation spot when you find the time?
I love going down south, to Mexico or Central America. I don't know. I just love the food. I love the culture, the weather, humidity. I'm from this really dry, cold province. And so if I can get out and go down south, I'm all over it.
Awesome. Favorite band or type of music?
I'm pretty egalitarian when it comes to music. I would say it depends on the day of the week, but I've been listening to a lot of Dan Mangan lately, who is
Vancouver boy.
Yeah, exactly. Vancouver boy. He's awesome. I've just cycled back to, I don't know if you guys listen much to System of a Down.
Oh,
but
wow.
They, the main singer literally has the best voice. It's crazy. So anyway, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, no kidding. And Dan Mangan, Neil Mangan, real estate lawyer.
Oh, well,
in Vancouver. Yeah, I'm just bringing it full circle.
Yeah, I've seen Dan Mangan a few times. He's so good. He sounds better live, which a lot of artists don't. But he's just so good.
So we got a last question here. We're going to make it a 2-parter. We're going to throw a bonus 7th question in here today. So number 6 is, what's a piece of advice you'd give an investor looking to enter the Edmonton market? And the bonus question today is, Calgary Flames or Edmonton Oilers?
A piece of advice I would give an investor if they are not from Edmonton, and this is me trying to be not greedy, is that I would reach out to as many, I guess, brokers or people that have tabs on the market as I could, and try to get on their list of off-market properties, right? Because if you're coming into a market and you don't know the market, everybody sees the stuff that hits the market. Half the time, the stuff that hits the market already has interest in it because the broker's already sent it to all their obvious answers. So I just say, make sure you're, which is kind of advice for anyone in the industry in general, is just make sure you're kind of connecting with as many people as you can to make sure you have a tab on what's actually available. And of course, because brokers are making lots of cold calls every single day, the more brokers you talk to and having a real concise idea of what you're looking for, then I think you could probably get more potential opportunities. And then as far as the hockey question, I would say I'm an Oilers fan. I've been in Edmonton almost my whole life. The only part of my life I wasn't in Edmonton was when I was born in Calgary, though. So my relatives in Calgary would probably chastise me for saying that. But no, I'm actually happy, to be honest. I'm happy if either of them go on. I'm like an Alberta fan. I love it.
That's a politically correct answer.
Yeah, I'm a salesperson. I have to be politically correct, right?
And Bronwyn, how can our guests find out more all about what you're doing at Omada there? And if they want to reach out to you, how can they find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Bronwyn Scrivens. I have a YouTube. I've got Instagram. I do a weekly video on the industrial real estate market in Edmonton. I do a monthly blog. So I'm like very active on LinkedIn or social media. So you can find me. If you Google my name, you'll find me. Let's just say that.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, guys. And hope to meet you guys in person sometime.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for your time, Bronwyn.
Yeah, okay. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye. And there you have it, folks. Our interview with Bronwyn Scrivens.
Yes.
I did it. Of Omada Commercial, out of Edmonton, industrial specialist. Definitely opens your eyes when you want to talk numbers versus BC versus Alberta.
I like that game that you were playing. The listen to how ridiculously expensive this is, and then how much is that how much is that in your market? That's a game we seldom play, but that's interesting to hear about just the uptick of activity and also kind of starting pre-COVID. But she did a fantastic job of kind of getting us excited about the region.
Yeah,
right?
and it's a great opportunity too for a lot of people who are looking to enter the investment world, just because the price per foot on some of the stuff she was talking about wasn't terribly expensive versus what you can see over here. Also, the vacancy rate.
Let's talk about that, because I know Vancouver's like below 1% when it comes to commercial. Yeah. How did you feel about those vacancy rates?
To be honest with you, it was a little bit less than what I anticipated when she said that it went from sort of 7 down to 5. I was expecting maybe it going from 9 to 7. So as it's trending in the right direction down there, that's always going to keep the occupancy rates very high for most landlords. A 5% vacancy rate is a very healthy market. A balanced market is probably 7 or 8%. So it's still trending in the right direction. And I think as the land constraints continue over here, you're going to find Alberta is going to be on many more investors' lists, companies' lists, and developers' lists, purely based on price and land availability.
Cory, what's the interest rate doing right now to the market, the commercial market in Vancouver, if anything?
You know what? It's spotty. And when I say it's spotty, there's certain asset classes or maybe owner-occupied units that might have greater effect on it. From an investment standpoint, we're still seeing buildings go into multiple offers, selling unconditional, over asking price, mainly because the inventory levels haven't really come up from where they were. And that makes it very challenging, because if you had 20 buyers in the middle of the heat of the market, now you got 5. 5 is still greater than 1, still has a high demand there, and we're still very fortunate to be in that position.
What would it take, do you think, to shake inventory loose in our market? Is that even a possibility?
It's hard to say, because we're land constrained. There's a lot of families that have owned a lot of assets for a long period of time. So when they're selling, there's a big capital gains component that has to be considered. So you're finding a lot of people are refinancing buildings and then deploying that capital into other assets within their portfolio. So it's hard to say right now. The challenge is, if I have a building that I paid $1 million for that's now worth 8 and I sell it, I have to go buy my same product back for 8 million again. So maybe I don't want to do that. So maybe there's, we had Al from Impact on the show talking about refinancing options. So you're finding a lot more of that is happening, more so than coming to market, because again, we're land constrained. There's not a lot of it out there. Construction prices are soaring. So that's going to push prices up just across the board with new product coming out. So it's hard to say what would sort of shake inventory loose right now. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer.
Yeah. And it was interesting. We just had on the sister show, Vancouver Real Estate Podcast, we just had MLA Canada on, and they were saying that a lot of projects right now are being stalled or people are pushing pause just because of construction costs and then also just getting materials right now just because of supply chain issues, right? So are you seeing that and are you hearing rumblings of that in the commercial space?
Yeah, it's gonna play havoc, I think, across both markets. If you acquired your land in the past couple of years, you paid a premium for it.
Right.
And construction costs obviously are going up dramatically. Interest rates, so the cost of that. One of the biggest challenges when you're a developer is the cost of acquiring the land and then holding the land before you can get a shovel in the ground. And as interest rates rise, that increases your holding costs. So you're getting hit there. You're also getting hit on the construction side and also the time delays because product is taking forever to get here. So I think it's going to happen. I think you're going to see that in some projects. We haven't experienced a lot of that yet in the commercial side of it, but not saying that we won't. But I think both sides of the equation for real estate, period, you're going to see some projects getting put on pause.
So I know you've had a lot of people reaching out just via email or just calling you to chat about commercial real estate. And we have said this on the show a lot, but if somebody wants to get in touch and talk about commercial real estate, they can just call you directly.
100%, 100%. And I get some guests that take us up on that. And actually, I get a lot of emails on a weekly basis with people that just want to say hi, talk about their portfolio, ask about certain asset classes or what our thoughts are. So we're always around. So you can reach us anytime at our Vancouver office, 604-428-5255. You can visit our website, williamwright.ca, for the latest and greatest news, or you can send me an email, Cory@williamwright.ca, anytime.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time today, and good to see you. We dress the same. We're going to be posting a photo on Instagram.
Well, it's funny. I came here today, and I didn't realize it was dressed like your idol day. So I really appreciate the outfit you wore. That's great.
Yeah. Oh man, I look at it's like your big, more tired brother is what I'm posing as today, even though I'm the smaller one. All right, good. Let's have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Subscribe today.